if we were going to go on a crusade across the nation and try to do away with the homosexuals, then we certainly would have done it on June the 8th after one of the most overwhelming victories in the country. But we didn't. We tried to avoid it and went into a place called Norfolk, Virginia, and were met with protest and all kinds of problems. And
Security agent, security agent.
No, let him stay.
No.
Let him stay.
Well, at least it's a fruit pie. Huh.
Let's pray for him right now. Anita, let's pray. Anita, why don't you pray? That's all right.
Father.
Debate over the controversial ordinance prohibiting discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations against persons based on their sexual preferences drew the largest crowd of citizens ever seen at a Metro Commission public hearing. On one side, several church organizations spoke in opposition to the proposed ordinance, while an equal number of proponents, including some religious leaders, American Civil Liberties Union spokespersons, and individuals voiced their opinions. The issue attracted two national notables: Chicago baseball coach Alvin Dark and singer Anita Bryant. Both oppose the gay anti-bias law.
I believe I have that right, that I can and do say no to a very serious moral issue that would violate my rights and the rights of all the decent and morally upstanding citizens, regardless of their race or religion.
After 2.5 hours of heated arguments sprinkled with amens and boos, the commission voted 5-3 in favor of the ordinance. Opponents shouted recall threats at the commissioners, while proponents smiled in victory.
Well, I think that some of the fears that are demonstrated here today are not going to become the fears that people think they will be. It's a question of application. I think that where people are concerned that this will violate their religious convictions, that's an issue of itself, and that will remain to be fought.
I think it's absolutely immoral. I think that the whole concept of even entertaining such an ordinance is immoral. I am absolutely distressed that men and women who have been elected officials would claim to represent the people and promote this kind of immorality.
The ordinance becomes law in 10 days, but a religious group headed by Anita Bryant said it will definitely begin a petition drive to repeal the law.
Well, I consider this ordinance will be a sign to the community that we're ready to accept the homosexual segment of our community into the mainstream of Dade County life. For too long, this community has been victims of not only discrimination, but a long-lived oppression that I think is inappropriate. I think it's important that the people of Dade County realize that it is not illegal to be a homosexual.
The fight against the county law on gay rights moved to some 20 Dade County churches today. According to the organizers of the group that want the voters to be able to cast ballots on the controversial issue, more than 11,000 signatures of registered voters were collected. Just 10,000 are required for a referendum to be called. One provision of the law that disturbs those who oppose it is the right for anyone, regardless of sexual preference, to teach in private or parochial schools if they are otherwise qualified.
There's no way that a homosexual would ever teach, a known homosexual would ever teach at Northwest Christian Academy. Just like there's no way that a prostitute would ever teach, a known prostitute would ever teach, or a known drunk would ever teach, because there are scriptural prohibitions, divine prohibitions against these types of sins. We know how people can be set free from those sins in the Lord Jesus Christ. We're not running down the homosexual. We're simply saying that there are God's laws against homosexuality that we must obey as His people.
Bitter charges have been made on both sides since the new gay rights law was passed. Prime targets have been sponsors whose ads feature Anita Bryant, who is president of Save Our Children.
They're coming, attacking my livelihood, and it has undermined a 10-year relationship with Florida Citrus of goodwill. But I feel very strongly, and I have great faith in God that He's going to take care of me. I'm not afraid. I have not been moved in that respect, and I do not believe that the products and the people that I represent will be intimidated by that kind of a force.
Well, she certainly is one to talk about it. Here she's trying to discriminate against huge segments of the community. We're not out to get after her job. We just feel that she, as a national symbol of bigotry, is actually undoing the product she represents.
Bob Kunst has become the leading spokesman for gay rights here. He says the current attack against them proves a law is needed.
Is all this kind of energy that's coming out in the community right now, we didn't initiate it, she's doing it. We're not educating our kids about homosexuality, she's doing it. We're not talking about anything. If anything, we've kept a very low profile on the whole business, but we're not about to be intimidated by her.
Both sides feel they are gaining in strength, and neither side will back down. The gay rights issue could be voted on sometime this summer. Ike Siemens, Channel 4 News.
The overwhelming majority of the constituents of Dade County are against this moral issue, and in particular that it concerns our children. And the organization which we formed after the courtroom hearing, the public hearing, says it all: save our children. We do not want our children subjected to this kind of a role model.
The point is that we're all human beings. You know, she doesn't like the fact that I'm an upfront model. The point is I don't reflect the stereotypes that she's always been teaching her kids and all these other people have been teaching their kids. The whole community is ready to see it on the ballot and to vote on it. I think people believe very strongly that it's time for government in the sunshine and not in people's bedrooms, and we're working towards that end.
Ms. Bryant, president of Save Our Children Against Homosexuals Incorporated, said her forces have gathered well over the required 10,000 signatures. A large suitcase bulging with petitions were turned over to the clerk's office for certification. Coral Gables City Commissioner Robert Brake said it took only 25 days to obtain the required signatures of voters in the county. The commission has 120 days to decide whether to reject the so-called gay ordinance on their own or let the voters decide through a special election. Moments later, during a news conference, Ms. Bryant said the big war against Dade County politicians is well underway.
Unfortunately, the battle that we won today is only that, a battle. The war goes on to save our children because the seed of sexual sickness that germinated in Dade County has already been transplanted by misguided liberals in the U.S. Congress.
Well, it's unfortunate that the taxpayers are going to have to spend $400,000 to see this on the ballot, but obviously Anita Bryant has brought this thing to the forefront, and now Alan Rockway and myself are challenging both Bryant and her husband Bob Green to an open debate to deal with all these witch hunt issues that they've tried to create fear and confusion in the community with, and have gone unanswered. We feel that these issues are a camouflage for stopping the Equal Rights Amendment in the state of Florida. We also feel that the Republican Party leadership in Dade County is behind the Save Our Children movement, and we want to ask some questions about what's going on. So in essence, what we're doing here is demanding a debate of Bryant and Green to expose exactly all this kind of chaos that they're producing.
Happy birthday.
To celebrate her birthday, we flew in from California a, pardon the expression, fruit grower.
Somebody had to lead the battle. Somebody had to raise up the banner. Because I want to tell you, we're dealing with a vile, a vicious, and a vulgar gang. They kill you as quick as look at you. If you don't think that, you don't know the ending.
The country is really at this moment looking to Dade County to save us from a wave of reaction and viciousness and bigotry.
What do you think's in back of it, if you think it is a wave of viciousness and bigotry?
Fear, misunderstanding. What is ever behind bigotry? You know, it's always a feeling that the other person is different from us, that they are the mysterious other, the monster, the threatening one. I mean, and if only those people who feel religiously could consider the golden rule and literally do unto others as they would have others do unto them.
The Save Our Children forces, led by Anita Bryant, were angered by this ad which appeared last weekend. They say it implies that 7 major corporations support the gay rights ordinance. But in telegrams solicited from the companies, they deny taking any position on the controversy and say no permission was given to use their names or logos in the advertisement.
In fact, the letters which are partially quoted in the ad were written in some cases over 3 years ago. long before the Metro Ordinance was even conceived. Furthermore, the homosexuals edited many of their original letters to eliminate any reference to the policy of reprimanding or discharging employees whose sexual habits interfere with their ability to be effective workers.
Save Our Children is also waging an ad attack too, and this Friday a TV blitz begins.
The Orange Bowl Parade, Miami's gift to the nation, wholesome entertainment. But in San Francisco, when they take to the streets, it's a parade of homosexuals, men hugging other men, cavorting with little boys.
The ad's creator, Mike Thompson, agrees that this spot will probably bring howls of protest from the gay rights forces. Mike Siemens, Channel 4 News.
We did not receive specific permission to use these companies' names or logos, but what we did have was letters in our possession which are indeed from these companies. These letters were quoted accurately. The charge that Save Our Children made about how we use these letters is their typical distortion they have engaged in this campaign. We quoted these letters responsibly, and the proof of that is that the Miami Herald Advertising Acceptance Department reviewed each and every letter and agreed with the Dade County Coalition for Human Rights that we quoted them in a responsible, reasonable manner. And these letters do reflect the anti-discrimination position of each and every one of these corporations. Okay, CBS, it's Honeywell.
Where's 18?
There's American Airlines. It's McDonald's. Let's see, Avon, Procter & Gamble, Bank of America, Citicorp. Let's see, here's AT&T, and here's IBM.
The campaign has been vicious. With television commercials, the Save Our Children group is appealing to parental anxieties, saying gays will flaunt their homosexuality before impressionable children.
The same people who turned San Francisco into a hotbed of homosexuality want to do the same thing to Dade County. On June 7th, vote for the human rights of your children.
The campaign has also had its bizarre moments. One of the men who is against homosexuals received a package in the mail. He thought it was a letter bomb. After the police exploded the package, they spent 2 hours picking up its harmless contents, pro-homosexual literature, which they had blown all over the neighborhood. Some thought it was humorous, but others, like Leonard Matlovich, said it was typical of the paranoia on both sides. Many people credit Matlovich with advancing the fight for gay rights in this country. He was discharged from the Air Force 2 years ago after he announced he was a homosexual. Today, the 33-year-old former sergeant lives in Miami. He believes his 12 years in the Air Force, a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart, earned him the protection of Miami's new law.
I spent 3 years in Vietnam. I spent 4 months in the hospital for hitting a mine that blew out underneath my arm here and my chest. It's still full of metal. And why did I do that? Why did I go to Vietnam and fight for the rights of the Vietnamese to make the world safer democracy there? Yet here in the United States, I'm being denied these very same rights that I went over there to fight for.
In our campaign, we talk about the danger of the homosexual becoming a role model to our children. And I'm not talking necessarily of child molestation in the physical. I'm talking about the psychological, which is even more detrimental and would have far-reaching effects on our children and on our nation. It's not a political issue, it's a moral one. I love the homosexuals. I love them enough to tell them the truth. Because God is very plain concerning these kinds of sins. He says in 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of God.
I feel very strongly that what we're faced with today is something that is being camouflaged under Christian faith, Christian love, that is one of the most vicious hate campaigns this country has ever seen. You are asking, Anita, for the right to discriminate. You're asking for an existing constitutional ordinance that has nothing to do with sex acts whatsoever. Strictly allows all people, gay
gay, bisexual, and heterosexual the right to a job and the right to a house based on affectional and sexual preference. It has nothing to do with sex acts whatsoever.
Anita Bryant is not reluctant to use her show business background during her public appearances on behalf of Save Our Children.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
Has really been the best thing that's ever happened to the gay community. She is getting families to talk to each other for the first time. Parents and kids who are just totally wide apart about, their own intercommunications are now saying, hey, sure, this is what's going on.
It could be called Anita's Army. About 50% of the volunteers working in the Save Our Children headquarters attend Anita Bryant's church.
This is my family. I'm Anita Bryant Green.
Her husband and manager, Church Deacon Bob Green, paid for anti-homosexual television ads.
Please join us in voting for the human rights of children.
Campaign headquarters of the gays. They are fighting to keep the law, which they say involves human rights. Early on, they decided to de-emphasize the issue of homosexuality.
Well, look, let's just throw the whole thing out and start over.
On June 7th, vote against the repeal of human rights in Dade County.
The Anita Bryant forces talk of absolute truth and morality. Gay leaders are equally dogmatic about human rights.
Anyone has a right to be a homosexual. It's a choice, and that's exactly the problem, is that we are saying that there are no human rights to corrupt our children.
It's my feeling that homosexuals have no real control over the situation which they're in. And they are entitled to the same kind of civil rights as anyone else.
This week, Anita Bryant sang at the graduation of the kindergarten class at her church school. The law protecting the rights of gay teachers applies only to private schools like this one. Miss Bryant says if the law is not repealed, public schools would eventually have to hire homosexual teachers too. A spokesman for the gays said a defeat for them would set their movement back 5 years. David Dick, CBS News, Miami.
An estimate by gay rights organizations, which they call conservative, places the homosexual population of Dade County between 150 and 200,000. By homosexual, we are referring to both men and women. They literally have their own society, clubs, bars, magazines, movies, and beaches like this one at Collins Avenue and 21st Street on Miami Beach. Until mid-January, the homosexual was either unknown or ignored by a majority of Dade Countyans. Then a bomb dropped on Dade County in the form of an ordinance offered by Metro Commissioner Ruth that would prohibit discrimination in the areas of housing, public accommodations, and employment against persons based on their affectional or sexual preference.
Need was demonstrated to the Community Relations Board, who referred this segment of the community to the Fair Housing and Employment Appeals Board, who again ruled that there was a need for this kind of legislation, and the law was written by the county attorney, and we have underscored the need for this kind of extension of civil rights to yet another segment of the population.
Local resident Anita Bryant, a former Miss Oklahoma, winner of 3 gold records, and known for her promotion of orange juice, took up the battle against the ordinance.
I wouldn't be totally honest if I didn't share this with you, that I believe that more than ever before that there are evil forces round about us, even perhaps disguised as something good, that would want to tear down the very foundation, the family unit that holds America together.
A group called Save Our Children was formed, and with Miss Bryant spearheading the campaign against homosexuals, national attention became focused on Dade County. Save Our Children collected 62,000 petition signatures, forcing the ordinance to be put before the public for a vote, giving the people a chance to repeal or retain it. the homosexuals or gays immediately began their counterattack, demanding equal rights and human rights for a minority group.
What we're talking about is we're your children, we're your parents, we're your grandparents, we're your next-door neighbor, we're people that you know, you're close to, that you already love. How much more pain would you give to people?
The question is the homosexual segment of the population being denied its rights?
Well, I believe that those rights could be pursued under existing federal law, and it would depend upon individual federal judges as to whether they were willing to extend federal civil rights laws to persons who claim discrimination because of sexual preference. So I think that there would be avenues open to them. How successful they would be is something that only the future could tell, and would depend upon the position taken by federal courts throughout this state and throughout the United States.
The charges of child recruitment, threats of homosexual teachers, the campaigns, the split in the religious community, and the campaign leaders telling their side in this issue that goes before the voters June 7th will be aired on Channel 4 between now and Election Day. Joan Hall, Channel 4 News. As the controversy over what has become known as the Gay Rights Ordinance increased and the charges against both the advocates and the Save Our Children people heated up, a do-or-die campaign went into high gear. Bumper stickers began appearing, along with full-page ads in the newspaper. Workers at campaign headquarters for both sides began the numerous calls soliciting funds. Brochures were prepared, and rallies and press conferences became daily occurrences. Mike Thompson, a 37-year-old Miami native whose business is advertising, became the communications director for Save Our Children. An active Republican, Thompson ran the federal state liaison office in Washington during the time Claude Kirk served as Florida's governor.
What is the most difficult factor you're finding in conducting this Save Our Children campaign?
The most difficult factor is communicating, because the television stations, the network stations, except for WTVJ, have declined to sell either side commercial time. We're not talking about giving us anything. The other two stations have refused to sell us time. A dozen radio stations have refused to sell us time. And the Miami Herald makes us jump through hoops in order to get an ad in the paper. And then they bury it. And it makes it very difficult to reach the people in an election when you're gagged and your hands are tied behind your back.
Save Our Children is hoping to collect $100,000 to conduct its media blitz, acknowledging that its opponents, the gay rights organizations, have an edge in fund collecting. That edge is being coordinated by a professional campaign manager brought in from New York at a salary of $800 per week, who works out of the Dade County Coalition for Human Rights campaign headquarters at 5390 Biscayne Boulevard. Campaign chairperson for the coalition is Jack Campbell, a 44-year-old local businessman and owner of the Club Miami, a health club for homosexuals. In 1975, he ran for the Miami City Commission and lost.
Many fundraisers being held throughout the country, many, of course, right here in Dade County, and we've set a budget of $200,000. We hope to raise that by the end of this campaign. This really affects, I think, 65 or 70% of the people in Dade County. It is not just a homosexual rights ordinance. It applies to anyone and everyone in Dade County, and it is a human rights issue.
Fuel has been added to the campaigns by well-known and respected people coming out for either side.
Governor Askew, no one can question his credentials as a civil libertarian, yet he thinks this is one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation that has ever been produced in the state of Florida, and he is for repeal of the ordinance.
The whole country is looking at Dade County now to see whether the people of Dade County are going to repeal human rights. I can assure you that everyone's attention is focused on this county at this time.
The human rights referendum on June 7th is a major news story nationwide. It's difficult to pick up a national magazine without reading something about Dade's upcoming election and gay rights. Even the television networks have something to say.
The battle over homosexual rights in Dade County, Florida, a battle pitting singer Anita Bryant against gay rights activists, comes to a vote there Tuesday. The issue is whether or not to repeal a 4-month-old ordinance which prohibits job and housing prohibiting discrimination against homosexuals.
Many of the largest newspapers in the country have been covering our referendum. But why all the attention? Jeff Prue writes with the Los Angeles Times and says because of Miami's varied community, the election here may foreshadow a national trend.
And this is the first place it's really happening, the first place an ordinance like this is being challenged. Now, whether the Miami vote is indicative of how other cities will go on this, I'm not really sure. Los Angeles is a city in many ways like Miami. We have a vast mixture, a blend of ethnic minorities and people who've moved to Los Angeles from somewhere else, just like Miami is. And I think Los Angeles will be watching this very closely because in Los Angeles we have Latin Americans. Of course, we don't have as many Cubans, certainly, as Miami does. We have Latin Americans, blacks. We have transplanted Midwesterners, transplanted Easterners. We have a vast mixture out there, and I think they're going to be watching Miami very closely.
Nobody can accurately predict the outcome of the human rights question here before Tuesday's election. But one prediction can safely be made. Whatever happens, it's fairly certain that the results will be known and debated around the world. Al Sunshine, Channel 4 News.
Yes, Jesus loves me.
Anita Bryant was once known as an orange juice saleswoman. Not anymore. With a religious fervor that has made her America's most controversial woman overnight, she has been selling her Save Our Children group. Her group is crusading to repeal a new Dade County law which protects homosexuals in jobs and housing. Anita Bryant began her fight at her church, where the congregation believes the new law will force them to hire homosexual teachers. Supporters of the gay rights law say it's a question of human rights for everyone. They have been handing out free shopping bags on Miami Beach, where they've been telling Jewish voters that Anita Bryant is dangerous.
If you allow just one human being to be allowed to have his rights taken away from him as a human being, then, pal, you don't have any right when they come to take away your rights. Because if you say screw you to them, they say screw you to you, and 6 million more Jews wind up in the toilets, and I'm not going to wind up with them.
While some voters are swayed by that argument, others are not.
You do what you want in the privacy of your own home. Don't tell me I got to accept it in mine.
No, we don't want it in yours.
I love homosexuals, if you can believe that. I love them enough to tell them the truth, because I know that there is hope for the homosexuals, that if they're willing to turn from sin the same as any individual, that they can be ex-homosexuals the same as there can be an ex-murderer, an ex-thief, or ex-anybody.
The most publicized leaders of the two opposing sides of the gay rights ordinance are as personally polarized as their stands. Singing orange juice advocate Anita Bryant says, quote, God has put a burden on her heart to crusade against the ordinance. A recent sunrise saw her at Eastern Airlines, shaking hands, passing out brochures, and urging the airline employees to vote for repeal. The gay leader, who has rocketed into national publicity by responding to Bryant, is Bob Kunst, a 35-year-old who became active in national issues while still in high school. Those issues included civil rights for blacks, the anti-Vietnam War movement, and saving the environment. Presently, Kunst is program director of the Transperience Center in Coconut Grove, one of 3 bisexual centers in the United States. He also helped draft the present ordinance. Bryant and Kunst explained their views.
Why, of all the issues in Dade County, have you decided to come out so strongly on this one?
As a mother, Joan, in protection of my 4 children, I felt very strongly because I'm a Christian, and we try and live by the Holy Scriptures, and we knew how strongly that God dealt with homosexuality, and so because they would become role models to my 4 children who are in a private Christian school, and this ordinance applies only to private religious schools, I feel that I have to protect my children's civil rights.
If all a kid has to see is a gay teacher, and there they are as, quote, the model, and they're immediately going to turn gay, then it's such a slap in the face to male-female relationships, and I think that's one reason why the heterosexual community is in much support of this ordinance with us, as the gay community is. It just has no relevance.
Most people know what homosexuality is, but many are confused about its origins.
Dr. Stillman, at what age is a child's sexual behavior or preference determined?
Usually the sexual preference becomes pretty fixed by puberty, about 12, 13, 14 years of age. Of course, if children have been exposed repeatedly to homosexual practices with people that they know, such as brothers, fathers, and so on, it may become a part of a pattern which becomes fixed by the age of 12. Many people are confused. They think that one episode will create it. It's not true. If one episode were to kick off homosexuality, then the groundwork has been laid a long time ago.
G. Michael McKay is the morning disc jockey at radio station WWWL, or Love 94. He is popular and well-liked by those he works with.
Morning, Love 94.
Yes, could you play Miracles by the Jefferson Starship for me?
All right, Miracles, Jefferson Starship.
Right.
You have got it.
Thank you.
McKay has decided to come out of the closet or admit publicly that he is a homosexual on this series. He explained why.
There's been a lot of talk about there being no discrimination against gay people, and I think that's wrong. It's something that's a subtle type of discrimination, something that's just condoned because the public has refused to become aware of what homosexuality is about. Lots of prominent people are gay, and I understand their fears. It's a little hard to stand up here and talk right now, but somebody has to do it.
Do you feel that this might somehow affect the number of people who might be listening to you every morning?
I hope not. I'm the same person I was before they knew that I was gay. I haven't changed, only they can.
The owner of WWWL says there will be no action taken against McKay.
I feel it's sad that he had to come out, that there is a concern and a discussion of his right to work and, of course, his right to live in housing based on his sexual preference.
But homosexuality also applies to women. 28-year-old Melodie Moorehead is attractive, intelligent, and a professional musician in addition to her career as a counselor. Eventually, she hopes to become a psychotherapist. She is a homosexual.
The ordinance is approved by the voters. Do you think that this will allow more freedom to homosexual women?
Society sets up a certain framework for us. And the framework is external. So where people put themselves in a position where they're working in an external world where it's important to feed themselves and to house themselves, I think that this ordinance will allow people to maintain their survival. And yes, I think that's important.
Still, for many, homosexuality is an abnormal and abhorrent condition. Supporters and detractors of the proposed ordinance are vocal in stating the two sides of the argument, as we will hear tomorrow in a look at conflicting views in the local religious community. Joan Hall, Channel 4 News. The Gay Rights Ordinance has presented a moral issue that has split the local religious community to the point that both Jewish and Christian leaders have sharply opposing views. The pulpit has generated as much interest in the June 7th election as any other factor. The Catholic Church, through Archbishop Coleman Carroll, has taken a firm stand opposing the ordinance. That view is upheld by the Orthodox Jewish congregations, as stated here by Rabbi Phineas Weberman, who is against the ordinance.
We also, as part of our religious teachings and moral teachings, consider homosexuality or any other kind of sexual perversion an abomination. And this puts us in a very difficult predicament if we would be forced to hire somebody who specifically states that he engages in perversion, sexual perversion, to have these people teach our children. We'd be in a contradictory position.
Rabbi Joseph Nerot of Temple Israel of Greater Miami supports the gay rights issue.
Discrimination against anyone, for whatever reason, is unconstitutional. Unfortunately, as we found out, it often takes additional laws, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, to guarantee these rights. Morally, anything we do to diminish the human spirit is a sin. Therefore, I shall vote against repeal of this amendment to our Human Rights Ordinance.
In the Christian faiths, there is also a schism in the ranks. Reverend James Duncan, Episcopal Bishop, strongly opposes the ordinance.
I say that it's time really for the church to be a Christian counterculture, which is saying to the lifestyle of the gays, the singles and to people who are engaged in adultery and all sorts of fornication, that these two are all wrong, you see? So therefore, I do not see that this ordinance accomplishes anything for either gays. It just simply destroys any moral fiber of our nation.
Reverend Albert Schmidt of Grace Lutheran Church, Miami Springs, is in favor of the gay rights ordinance.
The church should receive the homosexual into its fellowship with the same understanding and forgiveness that it receives every human being, because every human being is a sinner. Nor would our American Lutheran Church support any laws that deny the civil rights and freedoms of people because of sexual preference. If the government decides to deny civil rights on that basis, how about denying the civil rights of the bigots and the prejudiced?
The gay rights backers got some unexpected support from Benjamin Hooks, the Federal Communications Commission member who will become the new director of the NAACP. In town for a fundraiser for that organization, Hooks told a news conference that he's for human rights for all, and therefore he supports the ordinance. Then, the Coalition for Human Rights brought in 3 well-known psychiatrists to counter what the gay rights forces charge are myths, lies, and distortions by those who oppose the ordinance. The psychiatrists scoffed at the charge that normal children can be recruited into homosexuality, since sexual preference is determined between the ages of 3 to 5. Next, 5 top clergymen called a news conference to urge the repeal of the ordinance on religious and moral grounds. They say they have sympathy and understanding for the homosexual, but cannot go along with a law they believe will go against religious teachings on homosexuality. The Catholic Archdiocese has even sent out a letter to its 400,000 parishioners which says, among other things, that the ordinance infringes upon the rights of many while protecting just a few. Perhaps the only new information in the controversy came at this news conference. Episcopal Bishop James Duncan says he's fed up with both the gay and anti-gay groups.
A plague on both the houses. In the advertising and the media and what they've tried to impress upon people, I think have been fear tactics, and I don't approve of it.
Ike Siemens, Channel 4 News.
Does this now mean that this is a partisan issue? Because as you know, the Democratic Party here in Dade County voted just the opposite.
No, it's not really a partisan issue, Ike, because the parties have taken a position. I say it's not a partisan issue for the obvious reason that there are many members of the Democratic Party who are with us for repeal, starting, of course, with Governor Askew. State Senator Sherman Wynn signed our petitions back in February. And there are many Democrats. In fact, Anita Bryant herself is a registered Democrat. So we don't see it as a partisan issue, but it is an issue in which the parties have become involved. The Democratic Party against repeal and the Republican Party for repeal.
I agree definitely that this issue has become an Anita Bryant issue when indeed we're talking about the human rights of a very large segment of this population, and I think that's inappropriate.
Was the Commission backing down and not deciding this issue itself and instead putting it to the voters?
No, absolutely not. They were responding to the people who passed the petitions and to the appropriate procedure as set forth by the Home Rule Charter.
I feel in human rights, but I don't believe a piece of legislation on this issue is necessary.
I'm planning to tell you the truth, not to vote at all. I don't even think it should be an issue of whether or not I should vote for somebody else, but I think that if I was voting, I would be voting more for repeal. I think the way that both sides have handled the issue is very far right and very far left, and I'm somewhere in the middle.
I'm for human rights, so I'm against the repeal. I have a son, an 8-month-old son, and I do not want him being taught by a homosexual.
In my opinion, for any group to discriminate against any other group for any reason is immoral and infantile, and it ought to be illegal.
Rather than political or race or religion, it's an emotional thing. And I don't feel that anything that has to do with emotion should be voted on.
Well, the risks might be that people misunderstand the ordinance to mean that the community is giving sanction and favoring homosexual behavior. And my hopes are that this will not be the case.
What we're saying is that some of the most famous people in the world have been gay. Plato, Socrates, Tchaikovsky, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, the people who are already in the schools that they're teaching. The point is, why shouldn't people know that they were gay? I mean, why are we continuing with this facade and this lying and facetiousness, what have you? That only creates a division. The less we can tone down about the anxiety of relating to same sex, the more that, people will be able to cooperate with each other rather than being in confusion and always in a state of chaos. The point is, we're taxpayers, we're peaceful people, we're loving people, we're not going to be abused any longer, we're demanding the same rights as everybody else. It's a civil rights issue, that's it. 1, 2, 3, that's it. It's nothing else.
I'm Marshall Harris, speaking on behalf of the Greater Miami Organization for Human Rights, an organization composed of such people as former U.S. Senator Harry Kane, Janet Reno, Richard Wolfson, the vice president of this station, Jack Admire, and a host of others. We object strongly both to the editorial position of Channel 4 and to the logic by which it was reached. For anyone to seriously maintain that there is not discrimination based on sexual preference in this county is to say that there was no discrimination against Jews who got jobs only by pretending they weren't Jewish, or against blacks who got jobs only by being able to pass as white. Obviously, there is discrimination. The reason there is little complaint is it does little good for a gay to complain about discrimination in housing if the price of such complaint is the possible loss of his job, or if he were discriminated against in his job to find himself out of his apartment. Further, Tuesday is not a referendum on the homosexual lifestyle. I do not find the homosexual lifestyle to my liking, but that's not the issue. What is at stake Tuesday is whether you and I will go into a voting booth and decide that some members of our society are less than human and less entitled than you and I to the rights that all of us take for granted. The right to work, the right to live where you please, the right to be served in places of public accommodation.
I think it's a local matter that the people of Miami have to decide because it's in the form of a county ordinance. But what I have said just a few minutes ago on another reel of tape, same one, that if I were living in Dade County, I would have no hesitation in voting to repeal the ordinance. I do not want a known homosexual teaching my child, and I think that a person ought to have the right to determine whether or not they want someone with that known lifestyle living on their premises.
Well, I think the governor and I have a little bit different view of constitutional law. I'm a strict constructionist. I don't see anything in the Constitution that either the federal or state Constitution that denies gays the same rights as any other people. I think if you're going to start saying that the Constitution doesn't extend to gay people, then the next year maybe somebody's going to argue that the Constitution doesn't extend to people with red hair or blue eyes and things like that. I don't think there's any such provision in the Constitution.
Now that you've gone public, aren't you worried that it's going to cost you your job?
I think there's a very good possibility that I'll lose my job. I'm philosophical about it. I've worked very hard since I've been out of law school, and I think I deserve a rest. So if I lose my job, I'll be able to do a lot of things that I've been putting off for many years.
I think that the greatest pressure for me to resign was brought about by the commission staff, and I don't mean the entire staff, but certain key members, some of our directors, some of the older gentlemen who just had never been in a situation like this, didn't think that they could cope with it, and frankly felt very uncomfortable with having me around.
Last year, Florida had 100,000 child abuse cases, 30,000 which were reported, 1,200 kids literally killed by their own parents. Where was the so-called Save Our Children when we really needed them? The hate and viciousness assaulting this entire community has backfired strongly against the Anita Bryant forces because they haven't proven their case at all. Not one incident has happened here since passage of this ordinance January 18th, nor in any of the 40 communities that have passed such an ordinance, nor in the 2 communities, Iowa City, Iowa, and Tucson, Arizona, that have passed theirs since this began. And what is happening with the so-called Save Our Children is that they are asking for the right to discriminate, not only against gay people, but those who practice birth control, have had abortions, who smoke pot, drink alcohol, men and women who live with each other who are not married, etc. ad nausea. In other words, the attack appears to be on everyone who cannot fit their molds, who they cannot control, and who have different affectional and sexual preferences. These are the same people who've opposed civil and human rights for Latins, blacks, Jews, Catholics in the past, and would do it again if we allowed them to get away with it. The fact that they are so personally insecure is no reason for everyone else to be insecure, nor any reason for anyone to endorse their unconscionable attacks upon the basic foundation of this country, which is the United States Constitution. What makes America different from Moscow and Havana is the fact that we don't have official second-class citizenship, nor are Dade Countyans foolish enough to buy the confusion, intolerance, and discrimination the Bryant forces are using to throw away the Bill of Rights. This ordinance protects everyone in the community, has nothing to do with sex acts, which the opposition is obsessed with, and has been overwhelmingly endorsed by the National Council of Churches, 110 Catholic bishops at their national conference in Detroit in 1976, the American Jewish Committee, Dade County Democratic Party, the American Federation of Teachers, United Teachers of Dade, WMBM Radio, the Miami Times, and a whole range of other organizations and people in our community, gay, bisexual, and heterosexual, who are working together and communicating with each other. And on Tuesday, June 7th, they're going to vote against bigotry and hatred, against hypocrisy and intolerance, against second-class citizenship for anyone, and against repeal of Metro's anti-discrimination ordinance. We are going to win.
Yes. I brought my balance, so I don't know how to look.
Singer Anita Bryant's well-publicized emotional crusade to repeal Dade County's gay rights law ended at the voting booth today. 300,000 Miamians, a much larger turnout than expected, voted. Many believed Miami Beach's liberal voters would swing the election for the gay rights cause, but Anita Bryant has rallied thousands of fundamentalist Christians to her side for a strong anti-homosexual counterattack.
For the first time, I know the Christian community have never been involved in any political controversial issue. And they're not only involved, but they're committed. And they're not only going to, they've not only been working very hard, but they're going to come out and vote today.
The election may well be decided by people like Rick Ely, a bisexual who has kept his sexual preference a secret from his family. He is 27 and has never voted before.
Well, I've always felt discriminated upon all my life, and I've had guilt feelings all my life due to my own sexuality, whether I'm gay or straight or bi. And this is a chance to feel a little bit free from that guilt.
Gay activists are hoping there are many like Ely who have registered their sexual preferences in the voting booth to defeat Anita Bryant's campaign. Fred Francis, NBC News, Miami.
There's no question they're going to vote against repeal, and we would like to invite everybody in Miami to the DuPont Plaza tonight for a very, very huge freedom party.
Getting ready for, we call it the Lord's Victory Supper tonight, with all the mothers and the fathers and everybody that's worked very hard for repeal. And so we're having an old-fashioned get-together, and we'll be there until after the returns come in, and then we're going over to the Holiday Inn for a press conference.
There's no question that we'll win. There's no way that we can lose, even in terms of the courts. It'd just be such a shame for Miami that's in such a history-making position not to have the people make this decision for the courts. It's never happened before. And I feel that the community is going to respond. Everywhere we've been, the people have been really very super with us.
I know that we've done everything that we can to educate the people, and an awful lot of hard-working people out there that have done their homework, and this is an example of we're telling them how they can vote for repeal.
I think how close do you think it might be?
I don't think it's going to be close. I think we all might be surprised.
Going to win big.
I think so.
This is a WTVJ Live Eye Special Election Report. Here is Ralph Rennick at Dade County Election Headquarters.
We now have 46 precincts reporting in. That's 10% of the total. And Dr. Virgil Shipley, Channel 4's election analyst, is here alongside of me. And the vote is going now, 18,930 for repeal, 8,869 against repeal. That's climbed now to 68% of the actual vote for repeal Virgil, is that enough with 10% in for you to make a projection?
Yes, I think very definitely that the ordinance is going to be repealed. This 10% should be a pretty random sample across the county. Homestead, North Dade, but with this margin, it's over.
And the fact that it has been steadily increasing, too, from the early precinct reports. Well, Virgil, here you had a matter back on January 18th, a rather innocuous human rights matter was passed by a majority of the Metro Commissioners, took effect on the 28th, and then the campaign began to build. Anita Bryant and certain church leaders came out for repeal, and petitions were signed to force the issue onto the ballot in today's special election. But beyond that, there was very little political leadership or even public comment from individuals favoring repeal, and yet the vote today, 70% of the people coming out to vote for repeal. That a silent majority, certainly, but how do you read that?
Well, I think it was a silent majority. Someone indicated that at his poll today, a voter said, "When did you move here? And weren't you at the firehouse?" It's 7 years since we've been at the firehouse. In other words, this brought out a great many people that hadn't been participating very actively in politics prior to this. And I think largely you could say it is the church-oriented group that got out and voted. That we sometimes don't think that Miami is very religiously inclined, and yet I think that the churches had a profound effect on this issue.
Of course, George Wallace carried this county a few years back, which indicated a Southern conservative viewpoint was rather paramount here. That perhaps another indication of the basic conservatism of the area that people sometimes overlook in the neon signs and the flamboyance of certain parts of the county.
I think that's true. I think that an area like Hialeah, we don't have any precinct by precinct returns, but I suspect Hialeah voted almost overwhelmingly against it. I suspect that Gables was very much opposed to it. So this area of the community is quite conservative when it comes to these sort of issues.
One final question. Some people say democracy should not basically rest with the people in terms of referendums on every issue, but you elect commissions or legislative bodies to pass laws on matters. How would you fit today's election into that pattern? When should the people themselves speak, as they did today, and when should the commission or a legislative body be allowed to act on behalf of the people?
In general, I would say that the commission or the elected body should be the spokesman. That if the issue is well understood, then I think probably the citizens can vote. However, you get into this borderline. You wouldn't put the Bill of Rights up, let us say, for a referendum, because I suspect that a good many of the Bill of Rights would be overthrown. So I would say, in general, allow the legislative body to do its work. Then let the voters decide whether to remove that person at the next election.
But we do have a referendum provision, and that's part of our process.
Right.
And those signatures on those petitions led up to today's election, so the people have spoken.
They spoke very well, very clear, very loud.
This has been a WTVJ Live Eye Special Election Report.
It was a decisive end to Dade County's homosexual controversy. 200,000 Miamians told their elected officials they wanted no part of a law which protects homosexuals in jobs and housing. It was an emotional issue, and the number of voters who turned out set a record for a special election. It also surprised many people that 90,000 voters wanted to keep the gay rights law on the books. That was an impressive showing for gay activists. They celebrated last night with a spirit usually reserved for winners because they believed they won recognition. One gay activist said it would not stop here.
So everybody is going to be working together now in one very massive effort to do two things. First of all, guarantee human rights for everybody based on affectional and sexual preference everywhere in the nation, all through Congress. It's all happening all over the world. And Anita, we really thank you. We couldn't have done it without you.
Anita Bryant's leadership to defeat the law generated the national attention. In Victory last night, she talked about taking her anti-gay campaign on the road.
We've already been contacted by many communities and individuals all across the nation who have similar and are concerned and want our help.
Wayne, and that's the situation here right now from campaign headquarters at Save Our Children, as you can see. Can we get another? One more picture of the children.
We haven't seen each other for 5 months.
This is what heterosexuals do, fellas. Somebody wants a face front, just yell or whatever.
Tonight, the laws of God and the cultural values of man have been vindicated. I thank God for the strength He has given me and my family. And I especially thank my fellow citizens who joined me in what at first was a walk through the wilderness. The people of Dade County, the normal majority, have said, enough, enough, enough. For almost 5 months, our community has been subjected to the discussion of a highly emotional issue. This distasteful atmosphere was created by the insensitive and unnecessary action of a bare majority of the Metro Dade County Commission, 2 women and 3 men, who caved in to the demands of a highly vocal radical group. Hopefully, the Metro 5 have learned their lesson.
We have a national movement. We've created an entire awareness throughout not just this country but all over the world as to the discrimination that's going on, and if Anita thinks that the gay community is going back into its closet from this, she's sorely mistaken.
Well, I've been involved in a moral issue, and I have tried to steer clear of political issues, and I feel that that certainly is in the political arena, and because we have a job to do nationally with Save Our Children, that the people who voted for repeal will make that decision, and I'm sure there are a lot of them that will take care of recall.
But you don't personally plan to get involved in that?
No, as I said before, I've got a lot of work to do in other areas, but I don't think I have to get involved. I think that's going to be taken care of.
Just after the polls closed, the gay rights ordinance supporters at the Coalition for Human Rights headquarters at the Fontainebleau Hotel were feeling good. And even an hour later, when the final result was quickly becoming evident, their mood never changed. It was as if they knew from the beginning what the outcome would be. Later, when Metro Commissioner Ruth appeared, the crowd of several hundred streamed toward the stage to thank the woman who had brought the ordinance to the county commission and who had fought the hardest for its passage. She said she was shocked at what she called the incredible division that has occurred here because of the gay rights issue.
And we know that life will never again be the same in Dade County because of what we've done. There is love and there is understanding in this room that just won't quit. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of what we're doing here tonight.
But it was Leonard Matlovich, the former Air Force sergeant, who really turned the crowd on.
You know, they all use our vices as reasons to discriminate against us. And they don't care if tomorrow morning on the front page of the Miami, it says that John Smith, homosexual, raped Billy. But don't let it say tomorrow morning on the front page of the Miami Herald, Mary Ellen Jane, lesbian, finds a cure to cancer.
Then spontaneous singing broke out among the gays as they made it clear that they have found a new unity that they apparently plan to keep. Siemens, Channel 4 News.
As Anita Bryant received congratulatory kisses last night, she too knew that the war would still be going on. She is prepared for it. A victorious organization, Save Our Children, is, she pointed out, a national organization.
We have 3 national bills to contend with that would not only allow flaunting homosexuals to be in the private religious schools, but the national bills put it into the public schools. So it's a national problem now.
So the issue will leave Miami now to be thrashed out on a national level. By Congress, by the courts, or by the people? That is a question which troubles liberals who say that few civil rights would ever have become law if they'd been put to the test first in a public vote. Bill Wardham, ABC News, Miami.
I do believe that it is a setback, and it's showing that the normal majority of Americans have had enough. We all believe in human rights, but we don't believe human rights that would corrupt our children, or for individuals to have special privileges that would go against the constitutional rights of normal America.
You say you've been invited to other communities. Can you tell us which communities and where you think you'll go first?
Well, there have been individuals that can't speak for the communities, but they speak for a great many concerned citizens, like in Minneapolis and San Antonio, Texas. California provided, as I said earlier, about 45% of our support nationally, money and otherwise, and they're very concerned out there.
Morning.
How are you?
Just fine. How are you?
Good to see you. Feeling great.
The overwhelming defeat yesterday of the homosexual rights ordinance in Dade County, Florida, seems to have made the issue and the fight even more national in scope than before. Gays, vowing not to give up, staged nighttime demonstrations in New York's Greenwich Village and the streets of San Francisco. And Anita Bryant, who led the streets of Miami, talked of taking her cause to other cities. We have two reports, beginning with David Dick in Miami.
And with God's continued help, we will prevail in our fight to repeal similar laws throughout the nation, which attempt to legitimize a lifestyle that is both perverse and dangerous.
Anita Bryant wasted no time. Today she left Florida on her way to what was called the New Christian Crusade in Norfolk, Virginia. She has said no matter what it costs her personally, she's going nationwide with her anti-gay rights campaign.
It has been an economical sacrifice, but I was willing to do that for my convictions.
And we've got to now unite nationwide to stop what is really potentially a very vicious scapegoat campaign, not just against gays, but against all of the alternatives.
Gay rights leader Robert Kunst said homosexuals should not fear Anita Bryant or consider the defeat of the gay rights ordinance a setback.
Well, the issue didn't center at all on human rights. Apparently, Bryant's obsession with sex acts got everybody so unquestionably sexually insecure in this community that was the backlash that came out.
As long as they don't want to flaunt their homosexuality, they have equal rights the same as anyone else. And I think that was proved here in Dade County, that there was no discrimination.
Got to go to Virginia.
The strongest vote against the homosexuals was in the Cuban community, but blacks, middle-class whites, blue-collar precincts, and upper-middle-class areas helped repeal the ordinance by more than 2-to-1. Support for the gays was mainly limited to the Jewish community in Miami Beach and the Coconut Grove section where many homosexuals live and work. It was an unusually large turnout for a special election, but the reasons for it were, said one psychiatrist, a combination of sex, fear, and religious conviction. David Dick, CBS News, Miami.
An estimated 5,000 homosexuals and supporters of gay rights marched through the streets of downtown San Francisco last night, protesting the victory of Anita Bryant's anti-gay crusade. And today, a leader of San Francisco's gay community predicted trouble for homosexuals everywhere.
The vote last night in Miami reflects society's attitude. They need a whipping boy. They're angry. They're upset over the economy. And so that we're going to be that whipping boy. They're going to go after the homosexuals of America.
San Francisco is widely viewed as the gay capital of America. Nearly 30% of the city's 315,000 registered voters are believed to be homosexual. They have an annual gay tricycle race and a gay softball league, and a city law that prohibits discrimination in public employment because of sexual orientation, a law similar to the one voted down in Miami. And while the vote yesterday was in Dade County, the Florida anti-gay forces made it clear that San Francisco was at issue, as well as Miami, suggesting that Miami might turn into a haven for homosexuals, just like San Francisco already has. And today, a small group held a symbolic protest outside City Hall.
We're going to let them know that Anita Bryant and any other Christian bigots have stepped on the wrong minority, because we will fight back. We won't go back in our closets anymore.
Bernard Goldberg, CBS News, San Francisco.
Anita Bryant left Florida after her side won in the vote on homosexuals' rights to appear at a religious meeting in Norfolk, Virginia, where several hundred homosexuals came into the auditorium
sitting quietly until she seemed to refer to them as sinners, and that set them off. Here's Jackson Bain in Norfolk.
Hey, ho, ho, Anita Bryant, got to go!
400 demonstrators were in Norfolk, Virginia last night as Anita Bryant made her first public appearance since Miami voters repealed a local gay rights ordinance. 7,000 people attended her performance at a religious gathering, and some in the audience went outside to form a counter-demonstration.
Any man, woman, boy, or girl that will practice homosexuality, God Almighty will deliver them over to a reprobate, perverted mind.
Inside, all went smoothly until she mentioned homosexuals in her sermon. As she tried to explain that homosexuals could be forgiven by God, about 150 gay demonstrators shouted and walked from the auditorium. After Miss Bryant was given a 5-minute standing ovation by the audience, she tried to continue her explanation.
That when I said the word homosexual, that they didn't hear the last part of those verses. That God said, such were some of you, but ye are washed, ye are sanctified, ye are justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ.
It was an emotional evening for Anita Bryant, but she said she plans to continue her battle against gay rights ordinances in other communities. This is Jackson Bain, NBC News in Norfolk, Virginia.
The 37-year-old Bible-quoting Baptist and mother of 4 children said, it's God's battle. There was talk of going national. In Washington, the Senate and House voted to prohibit homosexuals from using federal public housing funds. Then events for the singing promoter of orange juice began to turn sour. Homosexuals started fighting back. The gays formed new groups and picketed the performer's public appearances, forcing her to cancel a few. Anita Bryant is now being sued for $5 million by a San Francisco mother who charges that the singer's activities contributed to the recent murder of her homosexual son. And a federal judge has ordered Miss Bryant and her group to stop using the name Save Our Children because a nonprofit group with a similar name complains of losing contributions.
Anita Bryant's role as a leader in the campaign against homosexuals may be hurting her campaign to sell orange juice. The chairman of the Florida Citrus Commission says if her anti-gay activities hurt orange juice sales, she'll be dropped from the organization's commercials. Yesterday, the commission's publicity director said he wished Miss Bryant would resign her orange juice role because of her role in the homosexual issue.
They now believe that militant gay leaders are feeding the gay movement by attacking Anita.
As the leaders have said, they're going to hound us wherever we go, whether it's on vacation or whether it's pursuing our religious beliefs in churches or whether it's pursuing our career.
For us to go in and take a crusade in all the different cities and have referendums like Miami, I don't believe will happen.
We're not carpetbaggers, and we don't ever want to be carpetbaggers.
So Anita Bryant will return to her career. She will offer advice to those who seek it, but she has decided not to lead her so-called foot soldiers of God on a national crusade. Fred Francis, NBC News, New York.
They say that witnesses have told police that the accused murderers in stabbing Hillsborough more than 15 times said, "Here's one for Anita." How do you feel about the fact that they're trying to connect Miss Bryant and the Save Our Children campaign to a murder in California?
Neither Mrs. Green nor I are going to comment on our feelings in regard to the lawsuit that's been brought out there.
Are you regretful that things like this are happening now after the campaign?
I would prefer that Mrs. Green did not comment as to how she felt about what the opposition, so-called, has done, either during the campaign in Dade County or subsequent.
It may be weeks or even months before the case is heard in a San Francisco U.S. District Court, but the attorneys handling the case are confident that the depositions taken today will clear the way for Anita Bryant's appearance in court. Ana Asqui, Channel 4 News.
Anita Bryant's Save Our Children was the organization dedicated to combating laws giving equal rights to homosexuals. The group was founded last year and successfully campaigned for the repeal of a gay rights ordinance in Dade County. Save the Children is a national relief organization that helps support youngsters in the United States and 14 foreign countries. The charity was founded in 1937, and that's why its attorneys successfully went to federal court last year to stop Miss Bryant's group from using the similar-sounding name, which caused confusion and allegedly a drop in contributions. Today, the group went back to federal court to try to block Miss Bryant from singing an anti-gay song entitled God Save Our Children. Judge William Hoovler ruled against Miss Bryant.
All we wanted was to stop the use of the word save our children in song and in name of organization and in book titles in any way that would confuse the public with the work of the Save the Children Federation, which is a 41-year-old organization which fights poverty, ignorance, and disease amongst children around the world, and which in no way is connected with the campaigns which have been recently waged by Ms. Anita Bryant.
Miss Bryant's attorney was asked if her freedom of speech is being violated.
Yes, but it's not that kind of a question that we would want to pursue further. It's really not worth it. There are many other titles that can be used. I think the one that is really hurt by the decision of the judge is the young girl who wrote a song for Anita Bryant to sing called Lord Save Our Children. That song will have to be retitled. But as a practical matter, it isn't worth pursuing.
The charity now says it's not going to follow through on its suit for damages. Bob Kaplitz, Channel 4 News.
Anita Bryant and her husband Bob Green returned home after she had completed a television interview under tight security in New York. She also had to cancel a news conference there when gay activists said they would cause traffic jams and put picket lines around her hotel. She says this kind of activity has become commonplace since her anti-gay rights campaign began here last January.
Out in Hollywood, we have been boycotted by the actors and actresses who believe in rights, except when you disagree with them, you see, and very inconsistent. And so they said they would not appear on these shows if I were to even make a personal appearance talking about my book. They don't want my side of the story to come out because it's the truth.
Are you being blackballed?
Well, it looks that way. It's worse than that. We're being threatened, and there's all kinds of harassment, even with my job with Florida Citrus. But I still know that God's going to take care of us. I'm not afraid. We're not afraid. But we're not going to shut up because people disagree with us. I think that's a basic right in America.
On November 16th, the Florida Citrus Commission will decide whether to keep Ms. Bryant as its $100,000 a year spokesperson. Her husband says if she loses that job, it will signal the end of her career. Ike Siemens, Channel 4 News.
I have been blacklisted for exercising the right of a mother to defend her children and all children against their being recruited by homosexuals. Because I dared to speak out for straight and normal America, because I dared to challenge the immoral influences of homosexual recruiters and their protectors on the Metro Commission, I have had my career threatened.
It destroys the dream that I have had since I was a child, a dream to have my own television series, to entertain and present wholesome subjects to my fellow Americans. This kind of wholesome entertainment. Because I dared to speak out for straight and normal America.
If we were going to go on a crusade across the nation and try to do away with the homosexuals, then we certainly would have done it on June the 8th after one of the most overwhelming victories in the country. But we didn't. We tried to avoid it and went into a place called Norfolk, Virginia, and were met with protest and all kinds of problems. And
Security agent, security agent.
No, let him stay.
No.
Let him stay.
Well, at least it's a fruit pie. Huh.
Let's pray for him right now. Anita, let's pray. Anita, why don't you pray? That's all right.
Father, we want to thank you for the opportunity of coming to Des Moines. And Father, I want to ask that you forgive him.
That we love him.
And that we love him. And that we're praying for him to be delivered from his deviant lifestyle, Father. And I just...
We forgive you.
What I did was right, and I can't go back and change some things after the fact.
Nothing artificial or synthetic here or here.
She was a national spokesperson for the Florida orange growers, and in 1978 was named Good Housekeeping's Most Admired Woman
in America. But her fight with the gay community had the wrong effect, according to the man who led the opposition.
She gave us every access to world media. We had over 50,000 news clippings. This is the turning point where gay became a household word, and we opened up the entire debate on human sexuality.
Even as her public image was being tarnished by the anti-gay campaign, she was devastated by personal problems. Her 20-year marriage was ending in divorce.
I got a lot of mail on that, and that was the most hurtful thing. So that just compounded my own condemnation, and I went into hiding. I didn't want to see the public. I never wanted to sing again, certainly never faced the press.
Her entire life had become a series of catastrophes. She'd been dropped as spokesperson by the orange growers. She had been dropped as a commentator on the Orange Bowl parade. She lost a television show contract. Her bookings dropped drastically.
I remember lying in the bed in my mother's house in a fetal position and wanting to die.
Yet somehow the deeply religious Anita Bryant had kept her faith in God.
Today I can honestly say that there is such a peace and a confidence and a maturity, if you will, that could have only come out of going down to those pits of despair and despondency and wanting to take my life. That I knew God was there in hell the same as he was, at times when I thought life was heaven. I did what was right, and the rest is history.